We just signed a page on the belief that we will be given the rest of the document because we had been told the contents of the documents. It was explained what is the content. And so we believe that what we are told is the content is the same. So we signed knowing that we'll be given the other one to do a few corrections here and there. But since that time, the document has been denied of us.
These political parties have a contribution to make. They want to belong. They have following in the country. And we don't want to fight.
It's not about any of us. It's not about this party or the other party. We came together because we believe that we are like-minded.
As Jamila Mohammed has just told me, it seems in this country we sign things and we don't know what we are signing. And that is from well-educated people, so we would imagine that they would. But then again, as Francis Gashuri would say...
Ini town.
Ini town.
Ini Kanairo.
Ini Kanairo. Okay, so listen, it seems... so shall we start there with this whole matter of coalition building? You recall when they signed the Azimio One Kenya deal, and they deposited, that with the registrar of political parties. They said, ndio hiyo hakuna makasiriko. Francis, cue makasiriko in less than 7 days. Like, it just doesn't seem, for instance, Kalonzo Musyoka is in Azimio, but suddenly he's grumbling and he's not pleased. And then once he's sorted out, then there's others who are not happy. Honestly, even with a law in place, we still have problems.
Yvonne, you and I have been to team building sessions. Is that game where you have 5 people and 4 chairs?
Yes. Musical chairs.
Yeah, and you have to do a few things and then one chair is removed. And so it's synonymous with what we see in the political scene. Because what you call makasiriko, especially from the other political parties, is as a result of a few things that have happened in the last few days. You see, on one hand, the Wiper leader Kalonzo Musyoka has laid claim to the running mate position in Azimio la Umoja. And you remember, way before Kalonzo openly now said he's supporting Raila Odinga, you saw Kivuda Kibwana, Alfred Mutua, and Charity Ngilu. They were really hammering Kalonzo.
Yeah.
In fact, they were saying, we can do without you, And
then once he got in, suddenly they were not happy.
Yeah, because there's that displacement theory in politics that they would probably, in my thinking, they would probably have wished that he doesn't come so that they lay claim to his share of whatever he would get if Azimio was to win. And so when he comes, obviously he comes in at a different position. And some political realities also dawn that, hey, if you were to talk about political realities, especially in a region like Ukambani, when you have Kalonzo on one hand and you have the 3 governors on the other hand, the question is who holds more sway there and who would deliver the numbers? The answer is rather obvious. And so the makasiriko that you talk about and you see today is a result of that. But at the same time, those makasirikos are consequential politically because this is an election where every vote will count. So you would want everybody happy. But is it possible to keep everybody happy in a political setup? It is not possible. So you will do a lot of, do I call it babysitting politically? So that when somebody throws a tantrum, you rush to, to try and deal with them and pacify them and tell them by the way, relax, things are not as bad as they are. And you will see this across the political divide because everybody is looking at their interest. And don't be lied to by any of these political players that they are minding about you very much. It's also about them. It's also about power. Because why are you looking for this presidency and this government and this power? You're looking for it because there is something in it for you as an individual, as a political player, before you talk about what is in it for the people that you represent.
Yvonne, I think for me, I look at it in terms of April 9th is coming. Yeah, you need to have submitted your
Saturday, the day after tomorrow.
Your political party membership list submissions, and now we have coalitions. Okay, 2 main ones. For me, I look at it in terms of a win for smaller parties. Why do I say that? You know, when you form a coalition, let's say you take about 20 parties or so, you form this coalition, you come together, what does it do? Within us, we will agree who will be our presidential candidate. Within us, we'll agree this is how we'll conduct our nominations. Within us, we'll agree on a number of issues. But then what happens when the bigger parties come and say, well, we are bigger, we are telling you to sacrifice your ambitions for candidates of the major parties. Okay? We are told join the bigger vehicle. This means that there's no alternative voice for the smaller parties. Their voices are not being heard. The voices of the larger parties are the ones that are only being heard. So saizi wakikaa ngumu, it's good for them kidogo, because it means now someone is going to listen to them, because one, we have this deadline coming. We need to have submitted our list, but not everyone is playing ball. Because we have progressive election laws. We have laws that should be able to speak for everyone. But now these large parties are overshadowing it all because wanaangalia maslahi yao wenyewe. Parties in Kenya are vehicles for election. We've said it so many times. 2017, the parties that were there, haziko hapa zaidi ama zimebadilika. And of course, even if they're still there are changes about who is in the party and who is not. And I bet you, by 2027, some of the parties we are seeing now hazitakuwa, because takuwa zimekuwa zimeserve purpose yao na wamemaliza. So for me, I look at this in terms of now, wacha parties ndogo pia zipate sauti.
And that is probably why, Linus, we heard Dr. Alfred Mutua, was it this morning or yesterday saying...
It was this morning.
Yes, in fact, and he sat, I believe, in somewhere here, exactly this position, and he said, oh, you know, in fact, I've got a missed call from Deputy President William Ruto, and so, you know, I'll see what he has to say, because it's that era you threaten and you, you know, you do that sort of thing, Linus.
Yes, and I think I see it this way. First, there is no such thing as small or big parties in this country. There are only big and small players, political players. If Uhuru Kenyatta today decides to join a party called, give me a name, Francis?
Coup. The one for
please remember, we're still in Lent.
Coup. The one for Singapore.
Yes.
Right, yes.
Or even just say the Pepper Coalition. That'll be a very huge party immediately on the spot. If Raila Odinga left ODM and decided he's going to chama cha sijui inaitwaje, that party will become very, very big, because there is no such thing as small or big parties in this country. The party landscape in this country is pathetic. We do not have parties. We have individual players who are big and small, which is why when Alfred Mutua sat where you are, Yvonne, this morning and said, oh, I received, I saw a missed call from Deputy President William Ruto, it's not the party membership that is being called. Did you see party members of Chama Cha Chap maybe going out in a demo and saying we're not being consulted about what's happening with the coalition? Have you seen members of NAC in the streets complaining about the state of the coalition? Because the whole party thing is a mirage. These are individuals. And it goes back to my theory of this delay. We are a country that is in delay mode, especially when it comes to the state of our politics. We want us to be a multi-party democracy, but you can't be a multi-party democracy without parties that function. And that is a problem. And when you look at what is happening now, it's been how many years? It'll be 20 years today since 2002 when we had the National Rainbow Coalition. The same players are meeting, and the circumstances of how they meet have not changed. They still have, these tantrums have always been there. In 2002, it was Simon Nyachae who was banging the table with 4 people and saying, if I'm not getting this ticket, then I'm going. And he did. And he did. Yeah. He made, Simon Nyachae was a man of his word. He'll do what he promises to do. And we still have these tantrums. And now, what has happened? We have more players. We have basically everybody coming, pretending to run some party. And I'm very sorry to the parties that call themselves small, because they're really small. They are the individuals that lead them. Without those individuals, you do not really have those parties. We need to look at this in the whole context of how sad this is. 20 years later, this is how we form governments. This is how elections are won. Last minute, And look, we are now going into the phase that have always formed government. It's the last 3 months.
Yes.
It's not parties that work hardest, but it's the last 3 months where you cobble up a coalition of tribes, of parties, and make sure the numbers hold together for the 3 months and you win the elections. I want to comment on the other side.
Yeah.
That Azimio is having this problem because it's a coalition party of how many
20?
parties? About 25 plus.
26, they say.
26.
Yeah, 26 individuals each leading a party. And it's a lot. Those are very many people. And obviously, they are more than the National Rainbow Coalition had to deal with in 2002. Now, the Kenya Kwanza team sits prettier in the state of affairs right now because really they have how many? 3?
But didn't Moses Kuria say he was leading 20 parties
Which
to
parties?
Kenya Kwanza? Okay.
Which
sorry.
parties?
He didn't. Probably was talking about the 20-something that are already in Azimio. It could still work the same way. We are
Right,
Kenyans.
yeah.
You can walk from that to
True.
the
Fair
other.
enough, yeah.
But Kenya Kwanza has an advantage right now. They don't
Yeah.
have as big a headache as Azimio does. Because in Azimio, the complications are multifaceted. Other than the number of parties that, with some of them small, that want to be treated better, you also have the running mates question, where Kalonzo Musyoka, who took so long to actually join Azimio, is now pushing a particular campaign, projecting himself as the best person to be the running mate for that position. And I think that has also partly fueled what we are seeing with the small parties. They are saying, oh, this gentleman arrived just the other day. We've been here. We signed up.
Yeah.
We have not complained. We are not being consulted. Show us the document. Kenya Kwanza, sitting pretty. Because in Kenya Kwanza, UDA is a much stronger, is a clearly...
Yeah.
You
It's
can
the
call it the
dominant.
It's the dominant party.
Yeah.
Call it the majority party in Kenya Kwanza. UDA can actually afford to tell whoever is being called by whoever to pick the call and leave. UDA can do that and still retain its strength. Azimio cannot do that. You can't afford to let...
Can ODM afford to do that with the other
It
parties?
can't.
And tell
It
them?
cannot afford to do
Yeah.
to do that. UDA can afford that. ODM cannot afford to do that.
And even with Kenya Kwanza, they've got 24 hours, actually, to meet that August 9th deadline, which is Saturday. Remember, it's 120 days
Coalition
to the
political
election,
party.
when the coalition political party must be registered, with the registrar of political parties. And perhaps maybe that's the reason we've seen, some sort of muted presence with the rallies. But it could also be because there's nominations, guys. And I want us to talk about the nominations headache, for just a moment as well. It was scheduled officially from the 16th to the 22nd, or at least in any case, they must be done by the 22nd. Many of them have already started, Jamila, but it's also such a tricky one for ODM even. They've talked about the 4 methods that they're using to conduct their nominations. And already there, you're seeing, complaints.
Yeah.
Is there are they doing a poll which decides who the most popular candidate is?
Yeah.
Then they're doing a delegate system, and then they're doing the nominations
Consensus.
as we know it, and then there's consensus.
Yes.
Did you say scientific?
Yes, that's what was
That's what
was said. That there's
there's
because we had complaints. Remember, they had
scientific
scheduled
by people who
they were going to start from 1st to 21st
Yes.
ODM, and just right before it started, there were postponements. There were some that were cancelled. There were talks going on, like the consensus. What happened with Homa Bay, where we had all the aspirants for the gubernatorial seat sort of agreeing to have Gladys
stepping down for
Wanga.
Gladys,
Yeah, and before that, one of them, Mbadi, who's the chairman of ODM, actually said, I'm stepping aside, and I'm not going to run for any political office. And then now...
we had Kidero.
And then we had Kidero saying, I'm going independent. Yeah, in fact, we were talking about the independent candidates. They're about 912 now, and that number may increase exponentially as the days go by. But then even now, of course, ODM says now they did nominations in Msambweni, where they got a candidate who's going to run for the parliamentary seat there. It was electronic. Party members were able to vote. But then in that same region, they had given direct nomination to several candidates. That wasn't as chaotic or did not elicit as much reaction as it did in let's say Kisii, where there was the candidate was given the woman rep, the current women rep was to be given the ODM ticket, and there were complaints about that. There was violence in Nakuru that caused the whole exercise not to happen. But then now, on the other end, you have UDA that decides to do everything on one day, on 14th of April, where they'll have anyone who wants to run for any seat. If there's more than one candidate in that region, there's going to be a nomination. And then I was listening to the chairman of the ODM electoral board, right? He's called Engineer Karanja?
Engineer Maura.
And he was speaking very confidently yesterday, actually, about the plans that UDA have. And he was saying, even if you're told to do it today, we will do it. We're ready to do it. And I was listening to Catherine Muma of ODM saying, well, we've done nominations several times before. And for us, we find that this is the better way. Find consensus, find agreements, find candidates who are able to step down for others who have to have electronically, what did they say? Scientifically. They said that this is the more popular candidate and give them it, because they said we do not have the money. And she admitted that UDA must have a lot of money if they're able to do this. But then the conflict will come up, Yvonne. And the fact that now every party wants to have the most strong candidate running for them in any particular region. So I think the next few days will be very, very interesting for all parties until ultimately we have that list. Tutakuwa na watu wengi wamekasirika. There will be tears. There will be people moving to nominations. It will be a battle.
I see Lina smiling when you're talking about the ideal way of doing a nomination, the nice things. But sasa, that is
for ground, mambo ni different.
That is, sasa umemaliza sasa hiyo ideal. Sasa wacha tukuje kwa reality. You see, political parties are aware that, especially the big political parties or the parties that have big political players, they know that conducting a nomination is not a simple thing, especially in a region where that ticket is almost a guarantee for you getting the position you're seeking. There are some areas in this country, if you get that party's ticket, you're as good as elected because, I mean, of that wave. It's a stronghold, if you may like. So that's why you will see a lot of, quarrels in terms of nominations. And so a political party will try as much as it can to avoid the image of violence during nominations. Because if you allow very bitter contestants to go at it, you are likely to see a serious fallout. But at the same time, you're trying to guard the presidential vote at the very top level, so that you don't antagonize one of the aspirants and seem to favor another one. But I also remember, in some places, the nomination is more like the election. Actually, it will be more contested than the general election itself. And so that's why you will see a lot of attempts at consensus building. And that consensus building also has a bit of coercion. Because you will be told, I mean, look, this is how the numbers are.
If you step down for this, we will reward you in
promises,
other ways.
There will be, I think, carrot and stick. There will be a bit of carrot.
More stick.
Yeah, there'll be less carrot and more stick, because you'll be told you step down in favor of so and so, and in return you will get this, or you will join the presidential campaign with the hope that once that team clinches the presidency, you will get a position. On the other hand, you will be told, okay, we will give this so and so the ticket. You can go and vie, and we see what you're going to do on the ground. But at the same time, I see a scenario where many candidates, especially in the same strongholds, will vie as independent candidates. And 2017 showed us that you can actually lose in a nomination if you feel you weren't treated unfairly. Go and vie as an independent candidate and get a seat. Currently in the National Assembly, we have about 14 members who are elected as independent candidates. And the Senate also, we also have an independent senator. So it tells you that I predict a scenario where the next parliament will be full of, will have more independent candidates than
and I guess when you're running as an independent, you have to have your own resources. You don't have, the machinery of a party backing you, having a rally that is done to, popularize the presidential candidate, and then you get to host it in your area. I mean, I think one of those, like you said, you have to be brave. I mean, I think Muhammad Ali went through that in 2017, Moha, and when he wasn't happy with what happened in ODM, he went independent defendant, and he won. So you've got to have your war chest ready, and make sure that you understand the ground and you know what it looks like. Exactly, yes, as well. I mean, and I think the idea is to make sure with these party nominations that you want them as democratic and as robust as possible to get the strongest candidate, but you also have to be very careful because friendly fire does kill.
Yeah, that's why I saw Lina smiling, because he realizes that.
Friendly fire.
No, it's worse than friendly fire. And it's something tragic about our expectations as Kenyans, that you expect to have weak, dysfunctional political parties and then have a dysfunctional nomination exercise and then expect a good election and a strong government.
Yeah.
I mean, even in construction, and I'm not an architect, it doesn't work that way. It depends on the material. It depends on the foundation.
Yeah.
So our foundation is the political parties that we have. Are they strong? Are they functional? Are they producing the best of talent? No, they're not. In nominations, are they even able to conduct their nominations well and therefore produce leaders by merit, the strongest, the most qualified, the most competent to be the representative of the party? The answer again to that is no. Then we are going to August expecting some miracle from up. The conclusion I always make about our expectation, and this is both the political parties, leaders, and even wananchi, we are not happy with the inconveniences that come that precede the election. We do not want the hard work of building strong political parties. We do not want the hard work of going through rigorous nomination exercises. We just want an election that produces the best of outcomes. It doesn't matter from where. Which is why 30 years into our multipartism, we are not really different from our neighbors. We can't claim to have a more sophisticated political setup than they do. In fact, if you look, and I keep drawing, always keep drawing the example of the Tanzanian example, they still they are much better than us compared to us because they run a strong party system.
Yeah.
Very strong party system. CCM, the Chama cha Mapinduzi, the party that has ruled the country for since independence, is actually run in the same way you would say the African National Congress in South Africa is run, the same way the Communist Party of China is run, because even party politics, and we keep mistaking democracy for indiscipline. It's not true. Democracy is also strict. Democracy is also disciplined. It actually says you produce a certain type of leadership. And that's how the Tanzanians, the Chinese get their leaders. Xi Jinping, the Chinese prime minister, if you look at his history and even the story of his father, and you can track backwards and say, this is where he is coming from. Where do our leaders come from?
Do I hear you, Linus, talk about guided democracy?
It's guided. It's not really guided democracy, because guided democracy presumes you actually interfere with the processes. No, you actually let the structures work. And I covered, and I keep giving the example of CCM because I covered them a number of times in the field as a journalist. And when you see how they pick a presidential candidate, it's a 4-stage. Actually, it's a long process. There is one, and this is interesting, where you appear before the council of elders of the party to discuss values, maadili, your values, like what do you stand for? Do you really represent our values? Because if you look at our democracy, most of our problems are about the unwritten things.
Yes.
It's not about, we have the most beautiful constitution. In fact, ours should have pictures. In other countries, like Tanzania, they'll ask you about maadili yako, what are your values? Are they consistent with
those of
the party?
Because the party has values.
The party has values. And then there's something else that they seem to add a number of times, and that is the values of the founders of the nation. What do we do here with our founders? Do we call them names? Their dynasties and things like that. So we absolutely have nothing to say. Waanzilishi wa taifa walisema. So there's a lot of fixing that needs to happen, which is why I lower my expectations about the August 9th election. It'll be a perfectly normal Kenyan election. We earlier discussed about the political intolerance. What causes it? It is this unpredictability of the processes, where you're not sure that your vote even counts, whether it's in nomination or during the elections. So a bit of force also comes in that, you know, let's force this. Maybe a stone can help, maybe a rungu can help. It is a problem of the systems. We need to understand that for these things to work, it's actually a lot of hard work. You need offices that function. Look at how temporal all our political offices are. Now, Azimio just brought in Tuju, and I really wish him the best, because you have to parachute and paratroop some help from somewhere to try and shepherd things along the way. When you go to parties like ANC, parties like Chama cha Mapinduzi in Tanzania, those leaders who are running the party were not called in the morning. They have been there, and they rose through processes that produce leadership.
Patiently.
Patiently. And we need to start thinking about that, because these suckers, in, year out, we've done this since 2002, and if we actually look at our 1997 election, 1992 elections, they would stand as better elections representative of the multipartism spirit, because we had KANU on one side, which was a very disciplined outfit, call it dictatorial, but they knew their game. And you had the opposition, which had to mobilize and do what they have to do to get somewhere, get to parliament, get to power. What is this thing we've been having since 2002? In fact, look at the governments that have run this country. I think we've been run by how many parties?
2002 was different.
Yes, and they have an expiry date. Like Jubilee is the immediate former party of government waiting to happen. There was PNU before it. There was NAC before it.
2002.
You know, it is ridiculous, and we're calling ourselves a multi-party democracy. I think in democracy ya kubambanya.
But what does it say about the electorate then?
They're not at fault. Don't blame the electorate. I would blame the parties.
Okay. So there we go. We are hoping for a good outcome from a flawed process. It's important to know that many of the parties, or some of them anyway, that are going through a nominations process haven't even had grassroots elections, have they?
No.
So to even build the party structure itself that then conducts nominations. Jamila, fanya ile kazi unalipwa kufanya kwa hiyo.
Jamani, let's take this home. Gashuri kwa sababu ameteseka tangu asubuhi, wacha anze.
Actually, let me start, because where you ended is where I want to begin.